Hi, I'm Matt Johnson.
And I'm Rachel Fowley.
And we're from the Autism Association, and we're a part of the Autism in Cricket project. And today we're hoping to talk to you guys all about supporting people with autism in cricket and to tell you a little bit about our project.
Cool. So, apologies. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of a session overview for you guys. So firstly, it's important to let you know what is autism and discuss what that looks like. Then look at the common differences experienced by people with autism who may wish to participate in cricket. And then we'll go over a brief introduction to key positive strategies and approaches to support people with autism within the cricket community.
So why have we gone about starting this project and why create inclusion in cricket? We know that children all around the country will be experiencing fantastic benefits from being a part of their local cricket team or their local sporting club. There are a huge amount of benefits, such as being part of a group, developing friendships, developing social understandings. And we know that sometimes people with autism don't get the same chances to participate in these environments. And as a result, they might miss out on those key crucial opportunities for learning those kinds of things, building the social friendships and networks, and developing those skills. So by getting to know individuals with autism and how we can support them best, we're more likely to be able to include them in the team and achieve success in that environment. And also, we want everyone to remember that just playing cricket in the team isn't necessarily the be-all and end-all of inclusion in cricket. For those who may not choose or like to play the game, there's always opportunities to include them in other ways, such as providing other roles like scoring, helping out with equipment, being a runner, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So what are some of the key things that we know about autism? So we know that in Australia, autism affects approximately 1 in 65 individuals. We know that there are around 4 boys diagnosed to every 1 girl that's diagnosed. The NDIS is a funding system that funds individuals with disabilities in Australia. And we know that in that system, around about 30% of participants with disabilities are made up of people with autism. So it's a really significant portion of the group of individuals that we're trying to support out there to be more included. We don't know the exact causes of autism. What we do know is that it's to do with the development of the brain in utero and in early life. We know at the moment there's no single known cure either. There are some genetic links. What is likely is that there are multiple causes for autism and that it is in relation to brain development.
And autism is a lifelong developmental disability, so a person cannot grow out of autism. However, with numerous strategies suggested by professionals and family and community, it is suggested that a person can have very successful, decreasing some of the challenges that they might have with their diagnosis, but a person will not grow out of the diagnosis. As Matt mentioned, autism affects the way the brain interprets information and communicates that information as well. So it might be interpreting numerous social cues, sensory information, and language, which could be expressive and receptive, or even understanding that language as well.
So what is autism exactly? Autism is characterised by a number of different areas that people might experience differences or challenges in. Some of the examples of these include communication skills, social skills and understanding, the way that they interact with people and their environment. People with autism might display restricted and repetitive behaviours and mannerisms. It might impact on a person's ability to clearly communicate their needs and wants or to understand those of others. It can impact on someone's ability to generally function effectively within the world around them. It can impact on someone's organisation and planning abilities. It might be impacting on someone's sensory processing. So that's the way they process the sensory environment around them. And can also impact on their understanding of the rules in society, so social rules that are often unstated or hidden. One thing that's important to note with autism is that every individual is different. Just like you or I, they will have their own personal strengths, characteristics, personality, and those things that they find challenging or need support with. Although there are all these different areas, every person might experience more significant challenges with social skills and communication, or have like a more improved ability with executive functioning or sensory skills. The one thing to remember is that someone doesn't sit somewhere at a fixed point on a spectrum. They're not sort of set as high or low functioning. The most important thing to note is that how a person functions in their environment is much more related to the environment around them and the way that they are supported and the supports that are put in place. If you could imagine a story of an individual who maybe is starting a new job for the first day, and when they're getting shown around their workplace, someone might show them the kitchen, and they're talking about the kitchen and saying that the fridge is a communal fridge and that the milk in the fridge is used for communal tea, coffee and Milo. However, this individual, for example, might misinterpret that term communal fridge and may have not had any previous experience with the social rules around this kind of thing. So, for example, at lunchtime comes and as a communal fridge, the individual decides to select the most appetizing looking lunch from the fridge and chooses to eat that one. Then they may look at the milk and decide that, yes, that's for tea, coffee and Milo. However, they don't like tea or coffee, so they choose to have a Milo and they select a really big glass and fill it right up with milk and put some Milo in there as well. Now, in that kind of workplace, it's not always appropriate to do something like that. So one of two things can happen in this setting. One, it could be a really difficult thing for the people in that workplace, and they could see it as an annoyance and something that's too difficult and quite upsetting for them to cope with. And unfortunately, in that example, that person might not succeed after their first day and might end up not going on to hold that job and have all the successes and friendships and development that might come with that job. On the other hand, if you can imagine an environment where the people are primed to understand the needs of a person with autism and have the strategies in place or the supports to allow them to implement strategies, then there's a very different picture for that individual. So people can see, yes, it might have been a challenge on that day, but with the right supports in place for that person to understand or learn the new social rules, to understand some of the guidelines that are in place around that particular social environment, the people can learn in that setting to include and value and appreciate that individual. And they may go on to have a really long and successful career in that position. And the outcomes of those two different examples are very, very different. And you can see that that's not in relation to the person themselves, it's in relation to the people that are supporting that person and the supports that they're putting in place to ensure that they have success. And it's going to be the same with cricket. We know that there are some challenges that people may experience, but it's all to do with how those challenges are responded to and what supports are put in place to ensure that person can succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys might not necessarily see an individual going into the communal fridge at cricket, taking the milk or taking someone else's lunch, but there are certainly things that you will notice or may notice about an individual with autism who is participating in cricket. And some of them might include the difficulties in following the numerous step instructions. That could be included in things like warm-ups or drills or pairing off activities at the beginning of a training session. You might also notice the difficulties or struggles with interacting, sharing, and taking turns. Again, that might be common in the actual game itself or during training, an individual not understanding that they need to share the bat or need to share certain equipment. But on that note, there are also hidden social rules. So there is potentially equipment that can't be shared in cricket, and it's teaching the individual which ones can be shared and which ones potentially can't be shared. Then it's also looking at individuals who may struggle to regulate their emotions, and they may struggle with the fact that they weren't able to go first in the training or weren't able to bat first. And it's assisting an individual to stay as regulated as possible so that they can have an enjoyable experience, as can their teammates. You might also notice that they may copy peers. So, if peers in the team want to high five their friends, an individual with autism may try and do the same thing, but it might not be at a socially expected time. So it's trying to teach an individual when would be that expected time. And of course, waiting. So waiting is an abstract concept that doesn't necessarily have a start or a finish. So that's something that you might find potentially challenging for individuals with autism joining cricket. But it's also good to look at, yes, certainly what is happening, but really thinking about why is this happening? Is it happening because we haven't been able to explain to the individual what is expected? Is it because maybe we haven't been able to liaise with the family? So as well as looking at the what, the why is equally important as well. So following on from that, now we've spoken about what you might see, it's good to obviously look at what you can potentially do to support individuals with autism in cricket. But also it's important to remember, even if you're not a professional therapist or, class yourself as a professional, you don't actually need to be to support someone with autism. Everyone in your club plays a really important part to be able to support someone in the team or individuals in the team with autism. And here are hopefully some simple, practical strategies that you can all try.
So one of the first things that you can do to lead towards a successful outcome for an individual with autism joining your cricket club is to start off on a really positive note. This sounds simple and obvious, but it will make all the difference. Sometimes starting a new environment or trying something new for someone with autism can be a very daunting thing. They don't necessarily know what they can expect. They may not know anyone in that environment. And it's important for them to feel like it's a positive and supportive setting. So right from the get-go, a positive approach is going to go a very, very long way. The people that are interacting with them and starting and supporting them and teaching them should be really positive with them initially and all the way through. Some really easy ways to do this is to ensure that they're being included and involved in all aspects of the day or the game. Make sure you give some effort to introducing them to a range of individuals and ensure that people are always sort of making sure that everyone is supported equally. Are they experiencing some success? Now, everyone's going to come with different varying levels of success when playing a game like cricket. Some people might come with a great amount of experience and understanding of the game. Some might just be interested to join and have never actually played any cricket whatsoever, but want to join for the social aspect and may be interested in learning cricket. It's always important to ensure that, as with anything, individuals will need to have a certain level of success to ensure that they stay motivated. It could be quite tricky early on, so it's important to make sure that you're observing that someone is experiencing a certain amount of positivity in their kind of games that they're playing or the drills that they're doing. And in some instances, you might find that you need to do some adapting and fiddling and arranging activities to increase the success. And some ways might be make that target easier to hit, bring them closer into the target, make the ball a bit easier to catch if you're throwing it from a certain distance. You might need to think about the equipment that you're using to just ensure that someone has the tools to be able to have a certain level of success at the game. Do they have someone close by who listens and cares for them? And that's really important. In not every instance is a parent or a carer going to be involved really closely. And I think it's important that they know that there is going to be someone there, like their coach or a volunteer or even a peer, who is going to be that sort of special buddy or coach who's going to stand by them and look out for them and make sure that they're actually genuinely caring for them throughout their cricketing time. choice is really important. We sort of take it for granted, but sometimes young people and sometimes people with disabilities can have all their choices made for them, and that can be quite challenging over time. And it's important for dignity, for everyone to have that opportunity to make choices. So always allow people to have a choice and a say in what they're doing during the day. So you can provide different options and they can make choices of what they're going to do. And other opportunities for breaks or downtime. So sometimes things can get a little bit overwhelming. So make sure there are lots of opportunities for them to step away and have a bit of a break if they need that. And one of the most important parts of taking a positive approach is if you know that a person is coming to your club who has autism, it's likely that the parent has let the club know in some way, whether it's been on their application form or they've come and spoken to the club beforehand. In that way, it's the parent saying, we want to let you guys know that this individual might need those extra supports. So really make great use of the family in that situation. The family is the expert. All the carers or the people who are closest to the individual with autism, they are the experts on that person as well. So really make use to develop a really collaborative and solid relationship with those people so that you can sort of ask them questions, ask for their support and their ideas and their guidance in those times where you might be experiencing some challenges and don't feel entirely confident on what to do.
Yeah.
As we mentioned earlier, people with autism do experience some challenges with regards to communication. And one of the best things that you can do is to think about how you are communicating during your trainings and games. Some of the simple things that you can do is to break things down into steps. You can use clear language and try to give chunks of information at a time. If someone's finding it hard to process a lot of information in one go, it might be very difficult if someone just keeps giving instructions and is talking a lot. So what you can do is think about how wordy your information is, try to cut out some of the superfluous words that you're using and just give simple key instructions, such as remember, stand behind the crease, remember, keep your arms straight, remember, over the top of your head, or hold your bat with two hands. Give those clear, simple instructions and don't sort of hide those instructions in large, long sentences. You can reinforce things on a one-to-one level. So sometimes individuals might have difficulty taking instructions or gathering information when you're in a whole group situation and you're giving an instruction to the whole team. You might need that extra person to sort of reinforce that instruction on a one-to-one basis or break that down after you've had your initial team talk. It's important to remember to be calm and clear in your communication. The GPS is there as a reminder. So if you feel like something's not gone the right way, something's gone wrong, someone might have displayed a behaviour that you're not sure about or could be challenging to the group or is distracting, think about what a GPS does if you take a wrong turn in the car. The GPS doesn't get frustrated, it doesn't reiterate the instruction 17 times. What it does is it takes its time to recalculate, recalibrates, and it provides the next instruction, such as do a U-turn or take your next right. Try to be the same if something goes wrong in your communication with an individual with autism. Rather than get flustered and upset and try and reiterate the instruction or to sort of take the person to task for a challenge, just think about what's the next thing that should be expected and then give that clear instruction. It's important to use visual supports for your language, and Rachel's going to talk a bit about this in a little bit, but use visual supports to give them an extra backing for what you're actually saying verbally. You can write things down, you can use pictures, but demonstration is also a really key way to do that. And model the language that you're doing. So if you're wanting someone to use language, a great way to sort of help support that is to model the language. So let's say, for example, using manners. When someone gives someone else their bat to use and they're not automatically saying thank you, rather than prompting them to say, remember, Johnny, say thank you, you can just model it by saying, oh, thanks, Mike, so that that person has a clear model of what they can say.
Yeah. So as Matt said, this is a really good opportunity to talk about how to use structure within cricket. But again, as we know, people with autism may struggle to understand complex instructions or directions. And so even, for example, a 4-step instruction might be too much for an individual with autism. So using structure can be really beneficial to, I guess, relieve some of that anxiety that an individual might experience. And if they don't have that structure, then they don't know what is expected. So providing structure gives that idea of this is what's expected and this is what I would like you to do. So using structure, you can use things like schedules. And so starting off with, this is what we will do first, followed by an activity second, and which again follows into that idea of having a routine. So it's having that set out ready prior to the individual starting either the match or the training. It's not necessarily writing it halfway through the session. It's having it prepared, ready, so the individual knows this is what I'm going to do, and this is the routine of either the match or the training. And that can also include clear markings. So having crosses on the ground to say this is where you stand when you bat, and this is where you stand when you need to wait for your turn. And clear markings can be used by either drawing little marks on the ground or using equipment such as coloured discs or even coloured bits of paper. Again, you can use whiteboards or pens as demonstrated in the picture here. So writing down the batting order, writing down what is expected. As I mentioned before, you know, that schedule of first we will do this followed by that can be written down on a basic whiteboard with a whiteboard pen. Things like a waiting visual as well, again, you can see on the PowerPoint, encourages the individual to know that it is their time to wait. Again, it's in picture form, it's clear, it says the word wait, there's no other expectation attached apart from waiting. We might also have to give structure around some rules. So again, it's encouraging them to say hands down, not necessarily saying you should not be touching your mate Johnny. It's hands down, and also perhaps giving a visual instruction as well. So using your own hands to say hands down can also be helpful. We also look at something called a first and then, which is again instructing the individual what is the first thing to occur, followed by the next thing to occur. We've also got another example of using structure, which is done by social stories. Now, these are a visual representation of a story to explain social rules. So it may be including words, but generally it includes pictures that go along with the words to explain those hidden social rules. We have numerous social stories that are available via our website, which I will highlight you to at the end of the presentation. So here are some examples of what I've basically spoken about. So on your left, you will see the first and then, and very explicit to say first we're going to bowl and then we will have fruit and have a break. So again, sometimes an individual may need this visual representation. Otherwise, it can be written, for example, on a whiteboard, first bowling, then fruit. You will also notice that it's not wordy, it's exactly what it is. We're not saying then we will walk over to the oval and then we will all sit down. At the end of the day, we've set the expectation of first doing an activity followed by another. The bits in between don't necessarily matter. The cricket schedule as well in the middle is more of a slightly complex or more complex schedule of maybe how a training or a match day might go. So it includes 6 or 7 activities about what will follow next. Again, these are all downloadable via our website, which I will highlight to you at the end. You might not have the luxury of having access to these at every training session. But again, like I say, pen and paper, whiteboard, really basic strategies and equipment that we have anyway, they can be adapted to suit your needs as needed.
It can sometimes be useful to remember first then, even when you don't have anything to hand for a visual version of that. A common experience is that someone might become distracted or interested in something else, or they might be sort of moving towards something that's maybe a less expected behaviour. They might be interested in the texture of the grass, for example, or they might be off sort of chatting to someone else outside. if someone's choosing to go towards something that is unexpected, sometimes you can remind them that they can choose to do that afterwards if there's a currently expected that they do something else. So just using the words first this, then that can be a nice way to say, instead of saying, no, don't do that or stop doing this, it can be great to say, okay, remember, we're doing catching drill now. So first we're doing catching, then you can go and sit on the grass over there. It's important to think about what motivates all of us as individuals. And for a lot of kids on your team, it's going to be inherently motivating for them just to be participating in the club, just to be playing cricket, also really socially motivated. So for a lot of individuals in general, they're motivated by social praise and social expectations. So let's say for individuals in a club, they're really motivated by their coach's responses and the praise that they're getting for doing a good job. Now, sometimes with individuals with autism, they might not have that same level of motivation with social praise. They might find other things more motivating. So it's important to consider what motivates someone. For one individual, it might be that batting is really, really motivating and that's all they want to do in sport. But as you know, being a part of a team means that you do a range of things and you're sort of a team player and you get involved in bowling and fielding and those sorts of things. So it could be that the batting is the motivating aspect that someone's working towards. So when I do my turn at bowling and when I do my time in the field, it gives me the opportunity to participating in batting, which is what I really want to do. But everyone might have a different individual motivator. For some people, it's something outside the game. So initially, before they've grown to really love the participation and get really, really involved, there might be an external motivator that helps keep them going. Something like they're working towards getting that extra toy that they're working towards, or they might get some extra time playing an activity after the cricket match, or a special activity that they do with their parents at the end of the day. Something like that could be useful to consider, and really important that that's going to be a personal decision for the family or the individual that you're working with. So always make sure to check in with that family or the individual as to, if you are going to use an external motivator like a toy or an activity, make sure you negotiate that with the family. But it can be great if you are going to use something like that to have a pictorial representation. And there's an example on the slide there of like a very basic I'm working for or rewards chart. And we often can use tokens. So if you're working for something like a toy or an item, sometimes you haven't got 10 items to motivate that person with. So you might sort of say, okay, let's do a few options. So if you participate in 3 or 4 activities in the day, then you've achieved the reward that you're working towards. And so you can use a token chart like that. And we do have templates of these kinds of things that you can just print off and use to your advantage, which you'll get on our website as well.
Cool. So I mentioned earlier the concept or the idea of waiting. And as you guys will know, there are certain times in cricket when individuals need to wait, and we might not necessarily be able to give them an exact time frame of how long they are going to wait for. So waiting is an abstract concept, and this time can potentially be risky as it's unstructured and there is not necessarily a clear direction of when the waiting will stop. But there are ways that you can prepare for this and have numerous strategies on hand to support you. So for example, one of them would be a timer. So again, getting your iPhone and setting a timer for we're going to wait for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, etc. But again, that time is quite concrete. So if you say to an individual they need to wait for 2 minutes and then the time changes, that can be quite difficult to explain to an individual that we've waited for 2 minutes and we need to wait a bit longer. So be mindful with the timers. As I showed earlier, we have numerous wait cards which are available via our website. A waiting choice board, so that could be while you are waiting, these are some things that you can actually do instead. And again, they can be related to the sport. They don't necessarily have to be sit on the bench and watch. It could be go and hit a ball with your friend or watch the game or try and keep score. So still involving them in a way that they feel that they're participating, but can ultimately distract them and give them some purpose when they are waiting. And again, as I mentioned, we have numerous social stories on our website, and one of them is around the concept of waiting, which is downloadable as well.
As we mentioned earlier, sometimes an individual with autism might have difficulties or differences in the way that they process the sensory environment around them. Some people might need supports to increase the sensory information to help them attend to it, but other people might be overwhelmed by sensory information and need some support to reduce the sensory information in their environment to allow them to feel calm, comfortable, and regulated in that environment. So some of the key ways that you can do this is to think about having the opportunity for breaks. Sometimes a person with autism could be a very avid rule follower. So if we're telling them that, you need to be a part of this activity until it finishes, they might need a break, but they might not say so. They might not know that they can take themselves off, and they might, as a result, become overstimulated or dysregulated during that activity. So it's great to set up the idea of a break system. You can tell them what they can do if they need a break. They can communicate, they can ask someone, or they can just step aside and go to a certain area to take a bit of a break. You might think about that environment by reducing the stimuli in that setting. So it could be a quieter space, it could be a darker space if visual information is a bit much, or it could be an access to any other sensory stimuli that they find calming. So some people like tight pressure, so they like to wrap themselves up. Some people like to fidget. Some people like to seek visual information. So setting that up can be done in collaboration with a family or an individual's support staff. But it's great to discuss how that will be taken, give them examples, show them how they can take a break, and using something like a break card that you can see there is a good way of helping support that communication. Yeah. You can give them a break card to keep in their pocket, and they can just show that to someone if they need to take that break. You can do things like set up the environment with the key things that they need, like a box of the special sensory tools that they like fidget toys and things like that. Or even if it's just a basic movement break, especially if it's a time of a lot of standing around, a lot of sitting around, and they need that extra movement, you could send them on a job to carry some equipment somewhere. Yep. You could ask them to move spots on the field and change positions, or you could sort of send them on a bit of a physical challenge, like some push-ups or a jog or something like that, just to get some extra sensory information, help them to calm and regulate.
Yeah.
So we've kind of come to the end of our practical strategies here, but one of the important things to note is that we often try to think about using a universal approach. So we've just got a little cartoon there that you can have a quick look at. And so what's happening in this cartoon is the kids are all waiting for the gentleman to shovel the snow off the chairs. And the young guy in the wheelchair has asked him to shovel the ramp. He wanted to shovel the stairs off first because the individuals were waiting. But if he shovels the ramp, then everyone can get up at the same time.
Yeah.
So a universal approach is all about that. So if we create an environment, a team, a setting, and some structures that has all these things in place anyway, they're not just to support one individual, they're going to be supportive for everyone in that team. And if we've got a team environment that's just created like that, it's a universally acceptable way to provide that support, and everyone can be included without too much segregation and differences.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we mentioned earlier is it's remembering that, you don't have to be a professional to put these approaches in place. It's universal. It can work for everyone. And if anything, it can be quite exciting to change up your coaching style as well. So, you've got numerous strategies and numerous ways of how you can teach something. And hopefully that works for everyone and not just individuals with autism. So finally, we want to show you guys the tools and resources that are available to you. So we do have 3 main resources that you can access. One of them being the public Facebook group for coaches, families and players. And that's an area where you can receive support from other coaches, players, families and Autism Association of Western Australia staff. And lots of forums and discussions that can occur there, lots of questions. So it'd be wonderful for you to be part of that. We also have our Autism in Cricket website, which has numerous downloadable resources and lots of videos for you guys to watch about how to implement other strategies and support things like communication, sensory preferences, for example. Numerous tip sheets to help you, again, how to put strategies in place for your whole team. And then finally, the Autism in Cricket publication, which has a copy of all the cricket related strategies that we're talking about today, but has them in written form. And finally, in the world that we live in, we're all about the internet. So we would love for you guys to connect with us via numerous ways, including Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, our Instagram page as well, which has daily Insta stories talking about cricket, and obviously our Autism in Cricket website. So please connect with us. And then finally, we just would really love you guys to join the team. Some semi-famous guy there that you guys might know of, but we would love you guys to be part of our team, and you can subscribe via our website at the bottom there, which is www.autismincricket.com.au, where you will be able to access the free downloadable resources, the videos and support from our Autism in Cricket team on a fortnightly basis. So it's a wonderful resource, and we very much encourage you guys to sign up to it, and we hope to see you guys join the team. Thank you. Everyone.